All right, so today we're diving deep, really deep into
Yeah.
Donald Trump's The Art of the Deal.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so we've got like this super interesting mix of sources we're going to look at. We've got like a Filipino newspaper article that breaks down like Trump's 11 key takeaways from the book. We've got a book review, and then get this,
Okay.
we even have a Reddit AMA with the book's ghostwriter,
Oh, wow.
Tony Schwartz. So, yeah,
This is going to be
it's
juicy.
going to be a wild ride.
Yeah.
But as always, like our goal is to like
Okay.
help you guys really understand the key information, different perspectives surrounding this book,
Right.
so that you can walk away feeling like informed, not overwhelmed. Does that sound good?
Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. So let's start with those 11 success strategies that the Filipino newspaper article highlights from The Art of the Deal.
Okay.
And these tips are like straight from the book in Trump's own words.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's interesting to see how they like align,
Yeah.
or maybe don't, with his actions over the years.
It's like holding up a mirror to his career.
Well, totally. Yeah.
Like seeing if those early pronouncements actually match up
Yeah.
with his later decisions and his public image.
Exactly. So tip number 1
Hit me.
is classic Trump. Think big.
Yeah.
He literally says in the book,
Okay.
if you're going to be thinking anyway, you might as well think big,
Like no holding back.
like no holding back. And the newspaper actually draws a parallel
Oh, really?
between Trump's think big philosophy and the aspirations of Filipino business leaders.
Huh. That's interesting.
Like they talk about people like William T. Lim of Mega Sardines, who like dreams of opening crime hotels all over the country, right?
Wow.
And then
That's big.
it is big. And then they even talk about tycoons like
Yeah.
Manny V. Pangilinan and Teresita Psychosin,
Okay.
whose ambitions extend way beyond the Philippines. So it's like a global mindset.
I see.
Think big.
Yeah.
Tip number 2 is all about managing risk. It's protect the downside and the upside will take care of itself.
Oh, okay.
And he says, I always go into the deal anticipating the worst. If you plan for the worst, if you can live with the worst, the good will always take care of itself.
That's interesting. I mean, especially
Yeah.
considering some of his very public business failures. It
Yeah.
almost seems ironic.
So wait, what?
Yeah, like how does that
Yeah.
juxtapose with like his public persona that
Yeah.
seems to embrace risk?
It's like, wait, did he like actually follow his own advice? Or like, was it just for the book?
Right, exactly.
Okay, tip number 3
Okay.
is maximize your options. He says, I never get too attached to one deal or one approach. I keep a lot of balls in the air because most deals fall out, no matter how promising they seem at first.
That, I mean,
Yeah.
this actually sounds like pretty sound advice.
Yeah.
You know, like keeping your options open,
Totally.
being flexible, adaptable. That's valuable in business.
For sure.
And like,
Yeah, absolutely. Tip number 4 is know your market. He says, I like to think that I have that instinct. That's why I don't hire a lot of number crunchers, and I don't trust fancy marketing surveys. I do my own surveys and draw my own conclusions.
I mean, intuition is a powerful tool.
Yeah.
But completely dismissing data, like expert analysis,
Yeah.
seems a bit
Risky,
risky. Yeah.
especially in those big, complex businesses he was doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, tip number 5 is use your leverage. He says, the worst thing you can possibly do in a deal is seem desperate to make it. That makes the other guy smell blood, and then you're dead. So it's about, like, you know.
Yeah, like projecting confidence,
Yeah.
maintaining an advantage.
Right, yeah, totally. Now, tip number 6 is kind of surprising. It's enhance your location. But he actually says, perhaps the most misunderstood concept in all of real estate is that the key to success is location, location, location. First of all, you don't necessarily need the best location. What you need is the best deal.
So it's not just about like the prime spot, it's about recognizing potential.
Exactly. Where others might not see it. Yeah, exactly. Okay, tip number 7 is where things start to get more about like image than actual strategy. So it's all about getting noticed. He says, one thing I've learned about the press is that they're always hungry for a good story. And the more sensational, the better. The point is that if you are a little different or a little outrageous, or if you do things that are bold or controversial, the press is going to write about you.
It's so interesting how like in retrospect, like considering his like mastery of media manipulation, like throughout his career, he understood the power of like generating buzz and attention, right?
Totally.
Even if it's through controversy.
Yeah,
Like
and it worked.
it did.
Let's be honest. He knew how to command attention, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Tip number 8 is fight back. He writes, in most cases, I'm very easy to get along with. I'm very good to people who are good to me. But when people treat me badly or unfairly or try to take advantage of me, my general attitude all my life has been to fight back very hard.
So, like, never back down.
Never back down.
Which is, interesting considering how he's dealt with political situations.
Totally.
It clashes a bit with how the Filipino author actually sees business.
Yeah.
They see it as more of a game than a war.
Yeah, it's totally different. Tip number 9 is about delivering on promises.
Yeah.
It's deliver the goods. He writes, you can't con people, at least not for long. You can create excitement, you can do wonderful promotion and get all kinds of press, and you can throw in a little hyperbole. But if you don't deliver the goods, people will eventually catch on.
I mean, that's something his track record has been debated on heavily, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Tip number 10 is contain the costs. He writes, I believe in spending what you have to, but I also believe in not spending more than you should.
Yeah.
That's pretty classic advice, right?
Sounds familiar.
And finally, tip number 11 is have fun. He writes, money was never a big motivation for me, except as a way to keep score. The real excitement is playing the game.
Interesting, considering his pursuit of, like, wealth and status.
So there you have it. The 11 tips straight from The Art of the Deal.
Okay.
Some of them seem like, kind of timeless wisdom.
Right.
And others are a little more controversial, even contradictory.
It's important to remember, like, we're seeing this through the lens of, like, someone who is admiring him, right?
Totally.
Like, there's bias.
Yeah. So now things are going to take, like, a dramatic turn.
Oh.
Because remember that ghostwriter I mentioned?
Tony Schwartz.
Tony Schwartz. He did a Reddit AMA.
Ooh.
And he didn't hold back.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the title of the AMA is already, like, crazy. It says, I'm Tony Schwartz, and I ghostwrote Trump, The Art of the Deal, AMA about creating a monster.
Wow. Like, right off the bat, he's setting a tone that challenges, like, the book's credibility.
Totally. And Trump himself.
And right off the bat, he's like, the book is fiction. It's my greatest regret.
Wow. That throws everything into question, right?
Yeah.
Is it a self-help guide? Is it myth? Is it both?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?
I know, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't stop there. He goes on to say, Trump never read a book in his adult life. Very primitive writing style, short attention span.
So completely different from the image of like a brilliant, articulate businessman.
Yeah, he's like, Trump was more articulate and fluid 30 years ago, but, like, he was always superficial, right? Like, he just hid his lack of knowledge about the world himself better back then.
He was like, if I had to describe his reading and writing level, it'd be early high school level.
Wow.
Someone asked him, like, what was the best thing about working with Trump?
Okay.
And he was silent at first.
Oh.
And then he's like, it motivated me to, like, change my life and make a positive impact on the world.
So he, like, took a negative and turned it positive.
Yeah, yeah.
Good for him.
Someone asked him, like, about his payment, like, how did you negotiate that?
Okay.
And he's like, I just told him that sharing the advance and the royalties would motivate me more, implying that Trump, like, readily agreed to the deal without much pushback.
Interesting.
Someone asked him, like, how accurate is the book? And he says, it's miles and miles away from reality.
Wow.
And it's like, it's more about Trump's idealized sense of himself.
So, like, less practical advice and more persona building?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. He said that, Trump rarely made jokes.
Oh.
And never at his own expense.
Really?
Yeah, he's like, when he did joke, it was at the expense of others and rarely funny.
That does kind of track with, like, what we know about him.
Then someone asked him about Trump's relationship with his kids, and he's like, he had virtually nothing to do with them until they were adults, and he had a clear preference for Ivanka.
Again, not surprising.
Not surprising. And then someone asked him if he thought Trump had any self-awareness, and he said, no change over time. Virtually no self-awareness when I worked with him 30 years ago, just as little now.
Concerning, if true.
Very concerning. Okay, this next one is intense. Someone asked him if he thought Trump actually loved his family, and he said, Trump was incapable of love, including for himself, which is why he seeks adulation so addictively.
Whoa, that's a very powerful statement, implying there's a psychological motivation behind his need for praise and attention.
And someone asked if he actually read The Art of the Deal, and he said, he skimmed through the manuscript and just gave it back to him with like intermittent red marks in the text, none of them substantive.
So again, more about control and image than actually caring about the book.
Exactly. Then someone asked about his political leanings, and he said he had no real ideology back then. He said, if anything, it was faintly libertarian. But he claimed that Trump has moved drastically to the right in recent years. He's like, he's just a shade to the right of Attila the Hun.
Wow.
Then someone asked, do you feel guilty about creating the image of Trump as a successful deal maker, the image that helped propel him into office?
Yeah.
And he admitted to feeling guilt, shame, and remorse. He's like, I can't undo the past, but I'm doing everything I can to tell the world what I know about Trump.
It seems like he's trying to reconcile his role in shaping his image.
Yeah, totally. And he was like, the best way for the country to recover after 2020 is to elect a progressive Democratic president and a Democratic House and Senate. So
he was pretty clear about his political leaning.
Right. Very clear. Someone asked him about Trump's mental state and if he thought he had a mental disability. And he said, I believe he has a severe personality disorder, sociopathy.
Right. And it's important to remember, we should never speculate about someone's mental health.
Of course.
Without, a proper diagnosis.
Of course, yeah. But Schwartz also added, others have suggested malignant narcissism. And he even said, I'm uncertain why his sons are so loyal. I can only conclude that they either hate themselves or are only in it for the money and power.
Ouch.
He said that he didn't think Trump had ever done, recreational drugs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he suspected he was a teetotaler.
Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah. He believes he's never touched alcohol, tobacco, or illicit drugs. Someone asked if Trump believes his own lies. And he said it's complicated. He's like, sometimes he knows he's lying, but he convinces himself it's true because he wants it to be true. But then he also said sometimes he believes it's true just because he said it. And then he just ended by saying, very little of what he says contains many facts or much truth.
Again, very concerning, considering his position.
Someone asked if he had to change things in the book, and he said, Trump never told me to change anything. But he did tell me a lot of things that weren't true, suggesting that, the whole book is built on fabrications and exaggerations.
Right, so deception was core to his approach.
Then someone flat out asked him, is Trump a savvy businessman?
Yeah.
And he said, no, he's a bully and a liar, which took him a long way.
Yikes.
And then someone asked Ed, how does the Trump, compare to the Trump of today? And he said, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely.
That's a classic observation.
And then someone asked if he'd kept any notes from, when he was writing the book. And he said, yes. And Jane Mayer, who interviewed me for The New Yorker, already published some of the entries from that period.
Huh.
And he said he's going to share more in an upcoming book.
Oh, I'm sure people will be lining up to read that.
I'm sure. Okay, before we move on, one last exchange I have to share. Someone asked him, did Trump ever express love in any genuine form?
Wow.
And he just simply said, incapable of love. Incapable of loving himself, which is why he seeks adulation so desperately.
It's like he's filling a void.
Totally.
With external validation.
Yeah. And he said he felt this way about Trump even while writing The Art of the Deal.
So that adds another layer of complexity to this, right? Why would he portray him in a positive light?
Yeah.
Despite these reservations,
Exactly. So now let's bring in a different perspective. The Wikipedia entry on The Art of the Deal offers a more neutral overview.
Okay.
And it dives into some interesting details about the book's origins. Apparently, Trump was convinced to write it by Cy Newhouse, the owner of Condé Nast.
Wow.
After an issue of GQ featuring Trump on the cover, it sold really well.
So he saw the potential for marketing and media.
Yeah, totally. And the Wikipedia entry actually confirms that Schwartz was brought in to write the book after Trump read a highly critical article Schwartz had written about him in New York Magazine.
Wait, what?
Yeah. The article detailed Trump's attempts to evict rent-controlled tenants from a building he'd purchased on Central Park South.
I would have thought you'd be furious.
Me too. But according to Schwartz, he loved the article. He even, had Schwartz autograph the cover, which featured this, unflattering portrait of him, and displayed it in his office.
So maybe he was drawn to people who, challenged him?
Yeah, or maybe he just enjoyed the publicity.
Right.
Good or bad.
It's that personality that thrives on attention.
Yeah, exactly. Wikipedia mentions that, Schwartz got this, lucrative deal for ghostwriting the book.
We talked about that.
Yeah.
What does that say about his negotiating skills,
Exactly. And Wikipedia actually adds that Schwartz admitted that, his primary motivation was financial. He needed to support his family.
It's interesting how, practical considerations can sometimes overshadow moral reservations.
It also highlights that, in 1988, Trump established the Donald J. Trump Foundation, which was supposed to donate the book's royalties to various charities, including, organizations supporting the homeless, Vietnam veterans, research for AIDS, and multiple sclerosis.
It's so
good, right?
Yeah.
Except, according to the Washington Post, those donations never materialized.
Oh, that's disappointing.
I know.
But again, not entirely surprising given
his history.
His history, right.
Yeah, okay, now this is where Wikipedia gets really interesting. It, dives into specific examples of exaggerated or misleading claims in the book.
Okay.
Contrasting Trump's accounts of his deals, which he, presents as solo victories, with the accounts of those who are actually involved.
So this directly challenges that core premise of The Art of the Deal.
Yeah, exactly.
That he's this brilliant, self-made deal maker.
Exactly. So, for example, in Chapter 4, Trump boasts about buying an apartment complex in Cincinnati called Swifton Village, and he claims it was his first big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But according to biographers and those who worked on the project, it was actually his father, Fred Trump, who spearheaded the acquisition and managed most of the details.
So he was taking credit for his dad's work.
It seems that way. And then there are other instances of this. In the chapter on the Grand Hyatt Hotel, which he calls, his true first big deal, he claims, without it, I'd probably be back in Brooklyn today collecting rents.
Full statement.
But according to journalist Wayne Barrett, who wrote a biography on Trump, he, conveniently omits the contributions of numerous individuals who were, instrumental to the deal's success.
Right, so he's downplaying the efforts of others.
Totally, yeah. And then the Trump Tower chapter is another example. He, portrays himself as having this brilliant plan to acquire adjacent properties and secure zoning variances.
Okay.
But his lawyer at the time, George Ross, tells a different story.
Oh, really? What's his side?
He's I was the one who explained zoning laws to Trump and how to purchase unused building rights.
No, so...
Yeah, air rights.
The ambites. And when it came to acquiring a key piece of property from Tiffany & Co., Trump boasts about, cold calling the owner, Walter Hoving, and tricking him into a deal. But according to Ross, it was actually Trump's father who had a pre-existing relationship with Hoving and suggested that Trump could work out a fair deal.
So again, embellishing his role.
Totally.
Diminishing the contributions of others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is a big one. Wikipedia even mentions that Trump's tax returns from 1985 to 1994 actually showed massive losses.
What?
He lost more money than almost any other American taxpayer during that time.
That contradicts the whole image of, the brilliant businessman.
I know.
That always turns a profit.
And Schwartz actually suggested that, based on this information, The Art of the Deal should be reclassified as fiction.
He even said, if it were written today, it'd be called The Sociopath.
Strong words.
So is it a practical guide to business success, a self-aggrandizing memoir, a work of fiction? It seems like it could be all those things, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
It's a multifaceted...
It's a puzzle. Right.
And it's a glimpse into, this complex and contradictory world of Donald Trump.
It provides a lot of context,
Yeah.
for understanding his journey.
Yeah, totally. It's like a Rorschach test.
Yeah, I think you're right. How people interpret it says a lot about them.
Yeah.
And their views on, business success.
Yeah, totally. So we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we have.
Exploring the claims in the book, hearing those revelations from Schwartz, examining its accuracy, and, delving into its cultural impact.
For sure. Yeah. It's been quite the journey through the world of Donald Trump.
But we still have this one, crucial question.
It's just...
how did The Art of the Deal influence Trump's political career? And how much did this book actually contribute to shaping the image that ultimately led him to the presidency?
That's the million-dollar question.
I know, right?
And that's what we'll be looking at in the next part
of Zach,
our deep dive.
Yes. So it's kind of wild how The Art of the Deal, despite all the stuff we just talked about, still had a huge impact on how people saw Trump as a businessman, you know?
Totally. It shows how powerful a good story can be, even if it's not entirely true. It's like people just wanted to believe in that myth of the self-made billionaire.
Yeah. The Wikipedia entry even mentions this phrase, truthful hyperbole, that Trump uses in the book.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
To describe, like, his well, let's just say creative interpretations of reality.
Right. He called it, what was it, an innocent form of exaggeration.
Yeah, and a very effective form of promotion.
Which, knowing what we know now about his communication style, it's kind of scary how accurate that turned out to be.
Yeah, especially in his political life, right? Totally. And Wikipedia actually connects that phrase, truthful hyperbole, with alternative facts.
Oh, wow.
Which Kellyanne Conway used to defend Sean Spicer's, statements about the crowd size at Trump's inauguration.
Right. It's like they're taking a page from the same playbook.
Exactly. But it's not just like Trump's words that have come under scrutiny, right? The Wikipedia entry also talks about this former KGB agent named Yuri Shvets.
Okay.
And he claims that Trump was, like, cultivated as a Russian asset.
Wait, seriously? For how long?
Like for 40 years.
40 years.
Starting in the 1980s.
That's a long time.
I know.
Like, that predates his presidential run by decades.
Yeah, and what's, like, really weird is that in The Art of the Deal, Trump actually talks about the potential business opportunities, like, in Russia.
Really?
Yeah, he even talks about, like, building a luxury hotel across the street from the Kremlin. Like, in partnership with the Soviet government.
That's kind of creepy considering what we know now about his relationship with Russia.
Totally, yeah.
It's like all these things that seem so innocent, at the time, take on this whole new meaning.
And this Shvets guy claims that he and, like, other KGB agents actually discussed the possibility of Trump going into politics.
Wow.
And then they were stunned.
Okay.
When Trump published a full-page ad, like, basically echoing Russian talking points.
So they were, like, grooming him.
Oh, yeah, sounds like it.
For this role.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It really makes you think about how personal ambitions can get tied up with international politics.
Okay, so let's talk about how The Art of the Deal led to The Apprentice.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Right. The Wikipedia entry says that, like, Mark Burnett, the creator of the show, was inspired by the book.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, directly inspired by the book.
Yeah, he was struck by Trump's persona and his self-proclaimed mastery of deal-making.
I mean, it makes sense. The book and the show both kind of revolve around this idea of, like, ruthless competition and,
Yeah, and winning.
Winning at all costs.
Yeah, totally. And on The Apprentice, Trump's opening monologue, like, literally referenced the art of the deal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was like, I've mastered the art of the deal. And as the master, I want to pass my knowledge along to somebody else. I'm looking for The Apprentice.
It's crazy to think how that show helped make him president.
I know, right?
It really boosted his popularity.
Yeah. Oh, and Wikipedia also mentions this parody movie that came out in 2016.
A parody?
Yeah, it was called Donald Trump's The Art of the Deal, the movie.
Oh, I think I remember hearing about that.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And look at this book review from Harvard Business Services, Inc.
Okay.
They actually praise the book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They say it's, like, honest and direct.
Huh. Interesting.
And they liked Trump's blunt style.
I mean, to each their own, I guess. Like, some people do appreciate that kind of communication.
They do acknowledge, that it's a little rough around the edges with a bit of self-promotion thrown in.
A little.
But they say that, like, beneath the bravado, there's actually some solid business advice.
Okay.
Like tips on negotiation, deal-making, and marketing.
So they're saying, like, even if you don't like Trump, there's still something to be learned from the book.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So what have we learned?
I mean, this book is a trip, right?
Yeah, it's like...
Like, is it business wisdom? Is it fiction? Is it self-promotion?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, I guess.
Yeah, it's a reflection of Trump himself, right?
Totally, yeah.
Like, complex, contradictory.
It's almost like a Rorschach test for how people see the world.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Right.
What you see in The Art of the Deal says a lot about you and your own value.
Totally. So we've done all this digging, right? We've looked at the claims, the contradictions, the impact. But there's one last, like, huge question we need to answer.
Which is?
How did The Art of the Deal influence his political career? And how much did it really contribute to him becoming president?
That's the big one, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to tackle in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so we've, like, gone through the book's claims, talked to the ghostwriter, even looked at its impact on culture. But the big question's still out there. How did The Art of the Deal, with all its issues, help Trump get to the White House?
It's a really interesting question because it shows how much image and storytelling matter in politics. The book wasn't just business advice. It created a whole persona that really resonated with voters.
Yeah, back in '87 when the book came out, it was huge. Trump became like this celebrity businessman overnight.
Right. Everyone was fascinated by his stories. He was bold, ambitious, went after what he wanted. It fit perfectly with that whole '80s vibe.
Yeah, people wanted to believe in that self-made millionaire idea, even if, the truth was a little different. They saw him as this ultimate deal maker who always won.
Exactly, and that image stuck with him. It became the foundation for his political career later on.
Then The Apprentice came along, and that image went into overdrive. Millions of people watched him every week, and it solidified that idea of Trump as the ultimate businessman.
It's crazy to think how a reality TV show could help someone become president. But it gave him this platform, this image of competence that people were looking for.
Right. And when he ran for president, he didn't campaign like a politician. He was the businessman, the deal maker who was going to fix everything.
It was smart. He tapped into those same feelings that made The Art of the Deal a hit. People were frustrated with politics as usual. They wanted something different.
Totally. He promised to shake things up, get things done, make America win again. And it resonated with a lot of voters.
They were tired of the same old thing. They wanted someone strong, someone who wasn't afraid to break the rules.
Yeah, and it all happened when the country was going through a tough time. The economy was shaky, people were divided, and Trump's message, which kind of echoed the truthful hyperbole from the book, offered a simple solution. I'm the guy who can fix it.
It was a powerful mix of populism, nationalism, and the appeal of a strong leader.
Right. And even though his presidency was, well, let's just say, controversial, you can see those themes from The Art of the Deal throughout his time in office. The deal-making, the distrust of experts, the fighting spirit, the blurring of truth and fiction.
It's like his presidency was a real-life version of the book, just on a much bigger scale.
Exactly. Whether you liked his policies or not, he definitely changed the way we think about politics and leadership.
No doubt. And it's all tied back to this book that was, honestly, full of questionable claims and even rejected by its ghostwriter. It's a cautionary tale about how powerful a story can be, even if it's not true.
So The Art of the Deal might not be a good business guide, but it tells us a lot about how Trump got to where he is. It's a fascinating look at the man, the myth, and the times we live in.
Definitely. It's a book we'll be talking about for a long time, trying to figure out what it all means.
That's it for our deep dive into The Art of the Deal. We've looked at the book, its impact, its flaws, and its role in shaping history. But like we always say, keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep diving deeper. There's always more to discover.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.